It was supposed to be her day. My sister's wedding in Charlotte, North Carolina. One of those grand fairy tale moments. The kind that makes you believe in love, in family, in all the things that should matter most. But the air was thick with tension, like something was about to break. And it wasn't just the weather. I stood at the front of the ballroom, the rich scent of roses filling the air. My parents sat up front, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. I had built my empire from the ground up, my tech startup, the pride of my life. My company wasn't just a business, it was everything I'd worked for. Then came the bombshell. My father stood up, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Step down as CEO or leave. Your choice." I thought I misheard. My heart dropped, but my mind raced. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. I had always known my father was tough, but I never expected this. My sister's wedding, the one day she was supposed to remember for love, had become a battlefield. The room fell silent, everyone staring at me. I looked at my sister, standing there in her wedding dress, eyes wide with confusion. She reached out, trying to stop me, but I was done. I could feel my hands shaking, but I wasn't afraid. I was angry. Angry at my father, at my mother, at everyone who had ever doubted me. I wasn't their puppet. I walked out. My parents didn't stop me. They didn't even try. I left the CEO position, left everything behind. The weight of it all crushed me, but I didn't look back. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. If you've ever felt betrayed by family at a pivotal moment in your life, hit that like button. Let me know I'm not the only one who's had their world turned upside down. I couldn't shake the feeling of the cold eyes on me as I stepped outside. The weight of my decision hit me like a brick wall. The chaos of the wedding, my father's ultimatum, still swirled in my head. But as I drove away, the reality of what I had just done settled in. I'd walked away from everything I'd worked for. The fame, the money, the power, all of it, gone in a moment of sheer defiance. I turned the corner, gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding. My mind raced, replaying the words my father had thrown at me. Step down or leave. A choice between family and everything I'd built. I thought I knew what I was doing, but the silence in the car was deafening. Was I wrong? Could I have done things differently? I didn't know. I didn't care. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was an email. I opened it, expecting something business-related. But it was a message from one of my investors. The subject line was simple. "I'm following you." My heart skipped. The same investors who had threatened to pull out of my company, just moments before my father's ultimatum, were now backing me. They trusted me more than they trusted my parents. Within days, I was offered a larger stake in a competitor's company. It felt like a win, but I wasn't celebrating yet. There was still a lot to figure out. But there was more to this story than I realized. The truth about my family's betrayal, about what they were hiding, would soon hit me like a freight train. If you've ever had to make a tough decision that cost you everything, share this video. Someone out there needs to hear this story. The days after my decision felt like a blur, moving too fast, but not fast enough. The world had shifted beneath me. No one expected me to walk away from the company, least of all me. But as the dust settled, it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I was still processing what had happened at that wedding. My family's betrayal, my father's ultimatum, the way everything crumbled in an instant. But then came the unexpected call that would change everything. It was a former rival, someone I'd seen as a competitor for years. He'd built his own empire in tech, a sharp-driven businessman who wasn't afraid to go after what he wanted. I never thought he'd reach out to me, but there he was, on the phone, offering me more than I could ever have imagined. "You're the kind of leader I want. I'm offering you a seat at my table, a bigger role than anything you've ever had," he said. I sat there, stunned, my mind racing. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an escape route, a way out of the mess my family had thrown me into. And it felt right. I didn't need to explain myself to them anymore. I'll make you a partner, your own share. We can do things differently, together, he added. The deal was everything I could have hoped for, and then some. This man believed in me. He saw something in me that my family had never recognized. The best part? He wasn't looking to control me. He wanted to build something with me. But as I hung up the phone, a strange unease crept into my mind. This was exactly what I wanted, wasn't it? Or was I just running away from the mess my family had created? Could I build something of my own without their influence? Or would I forever be tied to them, whether I liked it or not? It wasn't a clean break. It couldn't be. As the days passed, I began to analyze everything that had happened in the wake of my decision to leave. The wedding disaster. My father's cold ultimatum. My mother's cryptic behavior right before everything blew up. I kept replaying the moment she handed my father that phone. She had been hiding something I couldn't quite see. Her face, usually composed, had betrayed a flicker of fear. She was scared, and I didn't know why. It wasn't until I went through some of the documents from the company, things I hadn't bothered to look at in the chaos, that I found it. A text message on my mother's phone, one I hadn't noticed in the moment. The words, short and to the point. The investors are pulling out. This is your last chance. I felt a jolt of realization. This wasn't just a business decision. This wasn't about my performance or leadership. My parents had been orchestrating this all along, threatening to collapse everything unless I played along. But that wasn't the worst part. The real shock came when I dug deeper. I found out that my business partner, the one I had trusted for years, was feeding information to my parents. He'd been plotting my downfall for months, if not longer. Why hadn't I seen it? The signs were all there. The way he'd seemed too calm about my family's pressure on me. How he'd never really had my back when things got tough. He was in on it, from the start. And that meant everything had changed. It wasn't just my family. It was my entire foundation. The people I had trusted most. All of them. In on it. I wasn't just fighting my family anymore. I was fighting a conspiracy. I couldn't sit on this information. The weight of it was unbearable. My trust had been shattered, and the walls around me felt like they were closing in. I needed to confront him, my business partner, the man I had thought of as a friend, a confidant. I called him in for a meeting. The moment he stepped into the conference room, I could tell something was off. He wasn't surprised to see me. He wasn't even nervous. There was no guilt in his eyes, no shame in his demeanor. Just the cool, calculated confidence of someone who thought they had the upper hand. "Sit down," I told him, my voice cold. We stared at each other in silence for what felt like an eternity. I wasn't sure what I wanted from him: an apology, an explanation, or just the satisfaction of seeing him squirm. But I wasn't going to get any of that. He'd already decided who was going to win this game. "So, you found out," he said, leaning back in his chair. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My heart sank. He wasn't even pretending anymore. "How long?" I asked, barely able to keep the anger from spilling out. "A few months," he replied, his voice calm, almost bored. "Your parents were scared of you. You were getting too big, too powerful. They wanted to control you." His words hit me harder than I expected. The betrayal stung, but the worst part was how easily he said it. Like it was just business. He wasn't sorry. "You always knew what you were doing, didn't you?" I said, my voice trembling with the force of the emotions I was fighting to hold back. "You've been feeding them everything, all the information they needed to take me down, for months." He shrugged. "You can't blame me for wanting to secure my future. It's nothing personal, Charlotte. This is just business." My blood boiled. This was personal. I had trusted him like family. I had fought for him, built with him, and now he was the one who had torn everything apart. You know that moment when your family begs for forgiveness, but you know they're not truly sorry? Hit subscribe if you've ever had to make a choice between loyalty and self-preservation. I left the meeting with more questions than answers. It wasn't just about the company anymore, it was about everything that had been lost. Trust, loyalty, family. How had I missed all the signs? How had I let myself fall into this trap? The next few days were a blur. I had to figure out what to do next. The competitor's offer was tempting, but could I really trust anyone now? Everyone seemed to have their own agenda, everyone except me. I was the only one who had been caught in the crossfire, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. And then my sister reached out. It wasn't a surprise. She had always been the one who called after everything went wrong. She was the peacemaker, the one who thought everything could be fixed with a conversation. "Charlotte, please, can we talk?" Her voice cracked through the phone. "I know you're angry, but this isn't just about business. You're my sister. Your family." I closed my eyes, fighting the rising anger. Was she really asking me to forgive her? After everything? After everything our parents had done? After everything her husband had done? I didn't respond right away. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like forever. I wasn't sure I could forgive her. But could I walk away from her too? Was that what I had to do to save myself? I didn't know anymore. My emotions were all over the place. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her to stay out of it, that she had never been there when I needed her. But another part of me wanted to hold on to the only family I had left. I had to make a choice, and it wasn't going to be easy. The following days felt like a countdown to something inevitable. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation with my business partner in my mind, over and over again. The way he spoke, so cold, so indifferent. He wasn't just an ally who had turned into an enemy. He had been a wolf in sheep's clothing the entire time. I had to dig deeper. The surface wasn't enough anymore. I started going through the emails, the financial statements, everything. And that's when I found it. A string of private communications between my business partner and my parents. They had been discussing my future, my company, in secret. They had been manipulating me long before the wedding. I felt sick, betrayed at the core. But there was something more, something worse. My partner hadn't just been feeding information to my family for the sake of business. No. He had been planning to take over. He had been playing both sides, pretending to help me while secretly laying the groundwork for his own power grab. He had been planning to push me out all along, and I hadn't seen it. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just a betrayal by my family. It was a betrayal by someone I had called my closest ally. He had used me. He had used my ambition, my drive, my own trust to further his own agenda. I called him again, this time with the evidence in hand. "I know what you've been doing," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I know you've been working with my parents to destroy me." There was silence on the other end. Then a soft chuckle. "You think I'm the one who destroyed you?" "No, Charlotte. It was your father, your mother. They've been using you for years. I just took the opportunity when it came. You were too naive to see it. And now you're too late." I could barely keep my hands from trembling as I hung up. He was right about one thing. I had been naive. I had trusted him. I had believed in him. But now, that trust was gone, and so was he. It was time to play the game on my terms. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. With the weight of betrayal still heavy on my chest, I started to regroup. There was no more room for second chances. No more room for, maybe this was all just a misunderstanding. The truth was clear, and it was ugly. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not my family, get away with it. It was time to confront my parents. They had always been my foundation, my source of strength. But now, they were the very ones tearing it all down. I made the call. It wasn't a conversation I was looking forward to. We met in a quiet, nondescript restaurant. My father looked the same as he always had, his stern face unmoved by the years of success he'd built. My mother, however, seemed different. She looked tired, her usual composure replaced by a deep, unsettling weariness. It was as if the weight of all their actions was finally catching up to her. "I know everything," I said, not wasting time with pleasantries. "The emails, the meetings, the plans to push me out. You've been using me from the start." My father didn't flinch. "You were always too ambitious, Charlotte. It was inevitable." "You could have trusted me," I shouted, the anger bubbling up uncontrollably. "Instead, you decided to destroy everything I worked for, everything I built." My mother didn't speak. She just sat there, her eyes lowered, refusing to meet mine. Her silence spoke volumes. "You knew about it, didn't you?" I pressed, the hurt in my voice unmistakable. "You knew everything, and you didn't stop him. Why?" She looked up, but her gaze was distant, as if she wasn't even present. "I didn't have a choice. We were losing everything, Charlotte. I did what I had to do." I felt a chill run through me. The woman I had looked up to, the one who had always been my protector, had allowed this to happen. She had been complicit. The room felt smaller. The walls felt like they were closing in. There was no more room for excuses, no more apologies. This was it. You've been here before when the people you trust the most betray you. Hit subscribe if you've ever had to question everything you knew about your own family. The days following the confrontation with my parents felt like a slow burn. I couldn't undo the damage, but I could control what happened next. The game had changed, and so had I. My heart wasn't in it anymore, not in playing by their rules, not in pretending everything was fine. I started making my move. I wasn't going to stay on the sidelines and watch my family destroy what I had worked so hard for. I'd spent years building a company from the ground up, and no one was going to take that from me, not even my own flesh and blood. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about power, control, and showing them that I could rise above their manipulation. I made strategic decisions, quietly setting things in motion. My investors, the ones who had backed me up when I walked away, were now on my side. But it wasn't enough to just have financial backing. I needed to take the battle to them directly. I reached out to key people in the company, people who had been loyal to me from the beginning, people I knew I could trust. Slowly, the pieces started falling into place. I was building an underground network of allies, each one playing their part, each one working to take down the empire my parents had tried to destroy. But with each victory, the stakes grew higher. My parents knew something was happening. They could feel the shift, and as much as I tried to distance myself from them emotionally, I couldn't escape the fact that they still held power. Power over the company. Power over my life. I had to move quickly. Every move I made needed to count. I started leaking key information to the press, exposing my parents' dealings with my business partner. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about forcing them to face the consequences of their actions. But as the weeks went by, I realized something. The more I fought back, the more I became like them. Manipulative, calculating, driven by anger instead of strategy. And that scared me. I had to remind myself, this wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about taking back my life and my future. The game had always been about power, but now it was about trust. The more I moved, the more I realized I couldn't do this alone. The people I once saw as rivals had become my lifeline, and I was now aligned with them in a way I'd never expected. My former competitor, the one who had offered me a seat at his table, had turned into an unlikely ally. He was just as ruthless, just as driven as I was. Together, we started making plans to take down the company my family had once controlled. But I wasn't just fighting my parents anymore. I was fighting against the remnants of the empire they'd built, and it wasn't going to be easy. The shift in power was evident. I wasn't the naive young woman who had blindly trusted her family. I wasn't the CEO under my father's thumb anymore. I was something else, something more dangerous. I had learned how to play the game, and now I was in control. But as the plan started to take shape, something unexpected happened. My sister, the one who had tried to stop me at the wedding, reached out again. "I didn't know," she said, her voice shaking over the phone. "I didn't know what they were doing. Please, Charlotte, I need you to trust me." Trust. It was the one thing I couldn't give her anymore. She had sided with them, with him. And yet, here she was, asking for a second chance. I didn't know what to do. Could I trust her again? Could I risk opening myself up to another betrayal? Or had she finally seen the truth? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to make the same mistakes again. If my sister wanted to be part of my life, she'd have to prove it. This time, it was going to be on my terms. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you, only to be asked for forgiveness later? If you've been there, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and hit that like button for more stories of family, trust, and revenge. The day I decided to confront my parents publicly was the day everything changed. I wasn't going to settle this behind closed doors anymore. If they wanted a war, I would give them one they couldn't ignore. I organized a company meeting, making sure every investor, every employee, and every board member was present. The room buzzed with anticipation, though they didn't know the storm that was about to hit. I walked in, calm, composed, and fully aware of the power I held now. "Thank you for being here," I began, my voice steady. "There's something I need everyone to know." I laid it all out, the emails, the secret meetings, the manipulations. Every calculated move my parents had made to take me down. Every step my business partner had taken to betray me. The evidence was clear, undeniable. The room went silent. The air felt heavier than ever, but this time, it was because everyone understood the truth. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. I looked at my parents. Their faces, usually so composed, were pale. I motioned toward them, and they realized what was about to happen. "Do you have anything to say?" I asked. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother avoided my gaze entirely. The room waited. Investors leaned forward. Employees held their breath. I took a deep breath. "You've used me, manipulated me, and betrayed me. But I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to make sure you face the consequences." I called in the evidence one by one, the emails, the recordings, the documents. Investors nodded, some shaking their heads in disbelief. My parents had no words, no excuses. They were exposed. When it was over, I watched them kneel, not in submission to me personally, but under the weight of their own actions, publicly acknowledged for everyone to see. I didn't revel in it. I felt the gravity of it, the bitter reality of family betrayal. It was a moment of reckoning, the ultimate confrontation, and it felt final. Just when I thought the storm had passed, it wasn't over. I had exposed my parents, proven their deception, and reclaimed some measure of control, but the final blow came from an unexpected direction. My business partner, the man I had once trusted above everyone else, reached out. His calm, cold voice sent a chill down my spine. "You think you've won?" he asked. "Do you really believe this is the end?" Every instinct in me told me to hang up, to ignore him, to burn all bridges. But I needed to hear him out. I had to know if he had more plans, more schemes. He revealed that there was one more piece of the puzzle I hadn't seen. A financial move, executed behind my back, that threatened to undo all of my recent victories. He had kept a hidden stake in the company, one that allowed him to regain control if I acted too quickly. The realization hit me like a punch. I had been so focused on my parents, on revenge, on exposing them, that I hadn't fully accounted for him. Every victory I thought I had secured was suddenly at risk. I felt anger, frustration, and a deep, gut-wrenching sense of betrayal. This wasn't just a business maneuver. It was personal. He had manipulated every step, letting me think I was in control while quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes. For the first time in weeks, I questioned everything. Could I trust anyone? Could I even trust myself to make the right move? But there was no time to wallow. I had to act, to adapt, and to strategize. This betrayal, as devastating as it was, became fuel. I realized that winning wasn't just about revenge, it was about foresight, patience, and outsmarting everyone who had ever tried to control me. I wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. The days following my confrontation with my business partner were a blur. I'd been through so much already, yet here I was, facing down another threat, another betrayal that nearly shattered everything I had fought for. But this time, something was different. I was no longer reacting. I was controlling the game. I realized that if I wanted to truly regain control, I had to do the unexpected. I couldn't go back into the business world with the same mindset, fighting to prove I was better, stronger, or more capable. I had already done that, done it all, and it hadn't worked. I wasn't going to climb back into a power struggle only to have it slip through my fingers again. It was time for something drastic. It was time to walk away. I could feel the weight of the decision settling in my bones as I drafted the letter, as I prepared the final announcement. The company, my family's empire, had been my life. But if I stayed, I would never have the peace I needed. I would always be bound by their expectations, their manipulations, their control. The only way out was to leave everything behind and build something new, something completely mine. I called in a meeting with the key investors, the ones who had stuck by me when I made that difficult decision to walk away from my family. I stood before them, calm but resolute. "I'm stepping down," I said simply. "I'm leaving the company. All of it." The room fell silent, the shock clear on their faces. No one had expected this. They thought they had me figured out, that I would fight, claw my way back into power, keep chasing after that victory. But that wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I was going to make my own rules. I didn't need them to tell me I was good enough. I already knew what I was capable of. And just like that, the power shifted. The same investors who had threatened to pull out before were now following me. They believed in me more than they had ever believed in my family. They offered me a chance to take a larger stake in another company, a competitor that recognized my value. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom, about creating something on my own terms. It wasn't until a week after I made my decision to step away that the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I had been so focused on the betrayal, the power struggles, the constant shifting of alliances, that I hadn't taken the time to fully understand the extent of what had happened. It was a message from an old family friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I dismissed it as just another person trying to get in touch, but something told me to open it. The subject line read, "You need to know the truth." The email was short, but it hit me harder than anything I'd seen before. The friend revealed that my grandmother, before she passed away, had left behind a letter that had never been delivered to me. In that letter, my grandmother explained the truth about my family, about the real reasons behind my parents' actions. It turned out that my family's manipulations weren't just about money or control. It was something deeper. My parents had always feared me. They had always known that I had the potential to surpass them, to become more than they ever could. It was their own insecurity, their own jealousy that drove them to destroy me, to keep me under their thumb for as long as they could. The letter was full of revelations, things I had never known, things I could never have guessed. The deep-rooted envy, the jealousy, the fear, they had tried to break me, not because I was weak, but because they knew how strong I was. But there was a twist in the letter that stopped me in my tracks. My grandmother's final words were simple. You are not like them. You will build what they could not. In that moment, I understood. It wasn't just about me taking back my power. It was about breaking free from the chains of a legacy I never asked for. I wasn't going to be held down by my parents' fears. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future. I had always known I was different, but now I truly understood what that meant. My family's failure was my opportunity. I wasn't just going to rise, I was going to soar. Have you ever uncovered a hidden truth about your past that changed everything for you? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and hit subscribe to keep following my journey of family betrayal, power, and redemption. The weight of everything that had happened, everything I had discovered, slowly began to lift. It was as if the burden I had been carrying for years had finally been put down. But as I stepped away from the company, away from the family that had betrayed me, I realized something more profound. The real victory was in letting go. I could feel the absence of the company, the loss of what had once been my everything. But it wasn't painful. It wasn't defeat. It was freedom. I had walked away from the power, from the fight, from the endless game of survival, and I hadn't lost a thing. I had gained everything. But what truly shook me wasn't the new opportunity I had with the competitor or the larger stake I now held in their company. It was the peace I felt for the first time in years. The constant battle for validation from my parents, the internal war of trying to prove myself to everyone who never believed in me, it was over. I finally understood the depth of what my grandmother had said. I was not like them. I was not a product of their manipulation or their insecurities. I was my own person, and the only approval I needed was my own. As I took the first step into this new chapter, I thought of my sister. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, there was a part of me that still wanted to rebuild that relationship. But it couldn't be forced. I wasn't going to rush it. If she truly wanted to be part of my life, she would have to prove it. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth anymore. I had built something of my own, not from my family's legacy, but from my own resilience. The road ahead was mine to walk, and I wasn't looking back. The truth was simple. My family had tried to break me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. I was no longer their pawn, their tool to control. I had taken back my life, and now, I could finally start living it on my own terms. If you've ever fought against everything you knew to find peace and freedom, share this video. Let it inspire someone else to take control of their own destiny. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more stories of power, betrayal, and self-redemption.